Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats your boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing a Hallmark Channel movie called The Reluctant Royal. And after I do the review, I do my little Jen rating at the end, so stick around for that. That is always fun. So before I do my reviews, I always like to say thank you so much to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate you so much. I read all my comments. So if you have any comments or questions about the film, you can just leave them below. So getting into this movie review, The Reluctant Royal is a little interesting, right? Because it's kind of usually a lot of the royal movies we see on Hallmark is about a princess or a young girl goes and, she wants to marry the prince. So this one was different. Like I said, it was called The Reluctant Royal, and it is about Andrew W. Walker, who I love. He's a great actor. You've seen him in a lot of Hallmark movies. He's a mechanic in Philly, and basically he finds out that he's the heir to Duke William Glassnick, Duke of Glassnick. His name is William. So Prudence is kind of like his assistant or his chief advisor. She is told to get his things in order because he's getting older and he wants to make sure the succession is lined up for what happens to him after he steps down. So he doesn't have any heirs, so it would go to cousin Alistair. And now when you meet him, he is very snobby, very arrogant. And then you meet his mother, and she's entitled. She's, from the same cloth, right? I mean, they are both very, very arrogant and snobbish. So Prudence, who, like I said, is the advisor, which you find out her story later that, the William the Duke actually took her in when her parents passed and kind of raised her and helped her get through school. So she's very close with him, even though as he's gotten older, he's kind of gotten, they called him the old crust because he's just, very stern, I guess, and very strict, and just, I guess, doesn't smile would be my guess. But she obviously has been around him, her whole life. So she sees the way cousin Alistair. She understands tradition. She knows it has to go to the next person in the succession, but she doesn't like cousin Alistair. So she's going through all those papers to get it in order, and she sees a marriage certificate to Dorothy Payne, so in Philadelphia. So she Googles it and she sees a picture of Dorothy with her son Johnny in front of a car mechanic place because he's a mechanic, but he owns his own garage. So it was a picture in front of his garage. So her face lights up. She's like, okay, great. She's going to go to America, go to Philadelphia, and see if she can get him to come back, right? And I think she tells him, that this is what's happening. And we don't really know if he knows about his son or not, right? We just know that, she's trying to get everything in order. I don't think the Duke knows about it because he kind of told Prudence, like, the next person in line. And she's like, yeah, that would be Alistair. And that's tradition. So she goes to Philly and Johnny is singing karaoke in a bar, right? And that's when she kind of goes up to him and tells him. And he's like, no, I don't want to go. So then he talks to his mom because he was raised with his mom, just the two of them. They're really close. And his mom basically says, like, they gave you a first class ticket. I've never been first class, so they haven't either. I can definitely relate to them because I feel like I was raised the same way. So she's like, wow, first class ticket, you should go. And then she tells Johnny the story about, his dad, how they eloped. They met. She was singing in a piano bar, or playing piano in a bar, wherever. And after a week or two, they started talking, and within 3 weeks, they were married. So it was kind of like this fairy tale love at first sight kind of thing. And then went back to his country. So, she never remarried, but she's telling Johnny, like, you should go. And Johnny's like, okay, I'll only go just so that I can, see his face and tell him how great we did without you. Basically, kind of one of those things where if you feel like your parent ran out on you, you want to prove them wrong that you were good, even though they didn't help raise you. So I can relate. That makes sense. I feel like this is starting to be a little relatable. I know it's a royal movie, but he does go. And like I say, at this time, while we're seeing this, we also see Alistair. And like I say, he's just so arrogant, and his mother is entitled. She's pushing him along, and I'm just like, I just can't stand any scene they're in. Well done to the actor and actresses who play them, because they were arrogant and rude, and I never want to see them in scenes, but they played their part. So as he's waiting to meet his dad, he picks up a sword and he starts fake like fighting, like fencing with the statue there, which was very funny. And then of course, the Duke comes in, and he's a little flustered, but he's very stuffy, I guess I would say. Like, what should I call it? You should call me, Duke. And so he was real stuffy. And, Johnny was just like, okay. So they talked for a couple minutes. Wasn't really what he thought. He was like, if you're coming here for money, and Johnny was like, I don't want your money. So I feel like the first conversation didn't go well, but at the same time, it went like I expected it to. If somebody ran out on me and never raised me, and the first time I get to see them and their first words out of your mouth are you here for money? I'd be kind of pissed too. So I definitely can understand why Johnny got upset. And he leaves. One thing I will say before he leaves, he has the same mannerisms as his dad. They both did the whole little hand with their, put their hand over their hair. So you can definitely tell they're related, right? In the movie. So he walks out, and he's walking down this beautiful road. He sees a barn with the door open, and he says, this beautiful red car. It's filthy dirty. And he puts a little wash me, like you do with dirty cars, but it's beautiful. He notices it, and he's like, okay. And then he just starts walking down this really long road, because he's walking back to a hotel, back to the airport. Now, when the driver dropped him off at the estate, he was saying he owns that pickle. It's like or the pickle pub. Try to say that fast. So, Johnny's a typical guy. He likes drinking. He likes to have a beer and relax. So he went there. And Prudence finds him there and asks him to stay. And Johnny's like, no. So he goes, oh, okay, you play darts? And they kind of did a wager. So, I mean, Johnny's friend owns a pub. He goes there all the time. You saw he went there at karaoke when Prudence found him in Philly. He also made a kind of juice that he wanted his friend to sell at the bar. Now, of course, it's alcoholic beverages at the bar, so nobody wanted to buy his juice. But you can see he's not just a mechanic. Not that I think anybody is just a mechanic. I think all jobs are important, and I respect every person's job. So I shouldn't say just a mechanic, because that's a very important job. But he also has a side business that he wants to start selling this juice. It just doesn't go over very well at the bar. But I liked that he had like something else that he was interested in. So they do a wager and they play darts, and Johnny does great, but then Prudence gets 3 bullseyes. And the wager was, if I win, you stay. And if Johnny wins, he can leave. So, they go back, and Prudence is like, let me show you around. And she shows him the grounds, talks about the history. They go horseback riding, and he sees this beautiful countryside, all the land. And that's kind of when Prudence starts opening up to him too. Like, hey, I know he kind of seems kind of stiff, and that's when she's like, this is what he did for me. So, I look up to him. He's really a good guy once you get to know him. So, and they meet the cousin, and he makes a toast. Now, one thing that Prudence says too is like, look, even if you accept it and say you're going to be the next heir, you have a whole year to decide. So just say you're going to be the heir, and then if you decide you don't want to do it, like, you can still back out. So I guess that's some kind of royal rule they have in this movie. So the cousin makes a toast at dinner, and again, very arrogant, very snobby, very, entitled, and just downright rude, in my opinion. And his mother is egging him on. So he has this terrible toast, very snobby. And Johnny just stands up and goes, "Well, I'm going to be the next Duke." So that kind of pissed off the cousin, which I was glad to see because it was rude. The things that he says are just not nice. But it's like, oh, he can get away with it because he's royal. No, you should never talk down or treat anybody terrible. I don't care who you are or what you do or how much money you have, right? So he can't sleep. He's in this beautiful room. He can't sleep. So he goes back to that beautiful red car I mentioned that was filthy dirty. He's a mechanic. He couldn't sleep. He wanted to fix cars. And that makes sense to me. Like, if you can't sleep, you're going to do something you're comfortable doing. A lot of people watch TV if they can't sleep. I've heard of people exercising, working on cars, like whatever makes you comfortable. So he couldn't sleep. So he started working on the car. The dad comes in and they get to start talking, ask him for like a wrench or, a screwdriver. And he doesn't know. He doesn't get his hands dirty. He's the Duke. So, they start talking. And the second night, because this is a couple nights, the second night they start working on the car. Johnny asks them about his mom. And the Duke basically says, yeah, I wrote her letters. She never responded. And when Johnny's mom was telling him, how they got together, how they eloped, she said, I wrote him a letter when I was pregnant with you just to let him know, but I never heard back. So you're hearing from the Duke, he wrote letters too. So from what it understands, neither one of them got the letters. So obviously I'm thinking his parents intervened because who else would intervene, right? So yeah, so I mean, I think he didn't even know about Johnny because he never got the letter. And the Duke was sending letters to Dorothy, even though they weren't, staying together, he was still writing her letters. So I thought that was sweet that they actually were writing each other letters, but for whatever reason, the parents like stopped them and didn't let them go out and didn't let him get the letters from Dorothy. So I really do think he was surprised and didn't know about Johnny. Now Prudence is still helping him along the way, right? Teaching him how to dance because there's going to be a ball, wants him to be there. And then Johnny invited the people that are working on the farm. So he has all of this land and he has a working farm. And Prudence was saying like they live on the farm, but he's rent free. They're their landlords, and the Duke never charges them rent. So the people on the farm really, really respect him, even though he's kind of stiff and they call him the old crust. He's a good guy and he doesn't, price gouge them or charge them, crazy amounts to live there, which cousin Alistair is all about the money and he would. That's just how arrogant he is. So you definitely kind of get that feel like, hey, their lives or their jobs might be in jeopardy if Alistair takes over because he's so arrogant. So I thought that was nice. You can kind of see that. And once they get the car working, because he fixes the car in just a couple nights, of course, because he's an amazing mechanic. They go driving in the red beautiful car and they kind of talk again, just father and son. Because remember, he doesn't drive, he doesn't get his hands dirty, he's royalty. So it's kind of nice to get the wind in your hair and kind of drive in a car with the son. And they drive to the farm. And remember, Johnny was there earlier with Prudence, or a couple days ago. They got the equipment working because Johnny was like, why aren't you using this? So he got the equipment working and he told them about the juice that he makes, like I was mentioning early on. And they started making the juice and started using equipment that they hadn't used. The farm wasn't making a lot of money, so they were actually in the red. So you find out from Prudence that the Duke's parents, or his dad, was bad with money, and basically when he died he left them in debt. So the Duke, his whole royalty is, has kind of been trying to make up for that. So Johnny was like, let's get this equipment to work. Let's make this juice. Maybe we can sell it. And everybody on the farm loved the juice. They came up with the name Common Ground Juice, which I think was great. So I mean, he's talking to the workers, finding out that his dad is letting them live rent free, but that they're not making enough money on the farm, that basically he inherited debt. So this time while he's kind of, getting along with the staff, getting great along with Prudence, she's teaching him how to dance. The cousin, the SOB cousin finds annulment papers from Johnny's mom. So, they have a meeting, and the cousin basically embarrasses them, and says, there was an annulment and it was before the child was born. The child was born after, so he's not the heir to the Duke. He was born after the marriage was annulled. So I mean, he's basically saying, now remember, Johnny already said he'd take the position. Now he might go back on that, but Prudence is like, just feel it out. And he's feeling good, right? He feels like he's making a difference. He's talking to the workers. They're creating this common ground juice, which is his juice. They're getting equipment working, going to try to be more profitable. He's getting along with his dad. He's finding out he didn't even know about Johnny. So even though you have that resentment, he didn't even know he had a son, right? Because his dad was keeping those letters with the correspondence between him and Dorothy. So, I mean, you're upset he wasn't in your life, but if he didn't know about you, again, you can't tell somebody how to feel. It's still hurtful, but I think he was starting to come around to him. But the cousin making this big, announcement in front of everybody and belittling and embarrassing them, was very, was heartbreaking. So he's like, look, I'm leaving. Like, he's not going to stay for the ball. Now, Prudence, she looks at it and she noticed that the signature looks different on the annulment. So she runs to the pub and she's like, no, Johnny, you can't leave. You have to stay for the ball. And remember, he invited like the farmers and their wives, and and the friends at the pub, and the ball was only supposed to be for royalty. So Johnny's kind of bending the rules by inviting everybody. But if he's leaving town, the farmers and the people at the pub are like, I'm not going to the ball if you're not going to be there. I don't want to be with stuck up royals. Like, I was going because Johnny invited us and he's going to be there. So all these people now aren't going. But he Prudence convinced him to go back to go to the ball. So they go to the ball, and the best part, they go to the ball, and I don't even think that Johnny knew this because his face was surprised. But Dorothy comes to the ball, so you never really know like who did that. I'm assuming Prudence did, or Johnny told her about it, and she decided to come on her own. But the look on the Duke's face when he sees Dorothy for the first time in, what, 30 years, 25 years, whatever it was. I mean, the Duke's face lit up. And remember, this is kind of a stiff older guy who doesn't really hang out. I mean, he's kind of let his guard down a little around Johnny, but for the most part, he's still very, and he just lights up like a kid in a candy store when he sees Dorothy. So I loved that. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie. And the Duke gives a speech, saying that he was gonna, step down and go through the secession line, due to his health. But he's saying his health has gotten so much better just in the week that he's been there. He feels great, and he's still gonna, even though he's feeling healthy, he's still gonna, give it to his son. And the cousin interrupts in the middle of the ball, right? Just like he made a scene in the meeting, and says, Johnny can't be the heir. And then the Duke's like, well, Prudence has something to say. And Prudence goes up there and is like, the Duke never signed it. It must have been forged by his father. Something about, you know, how he writes, like he's left-handed or right-handed, and it would have smudged, but he didn't even sign the annulment papers. So his dad must have forged it. And if he forged it, then it's not a legal document, like it's invalid. So Prudence basically says it's possible that him and Dorothy are still married, but at either rate, the heir is still going to go to Johnny. And then, obviously Alistair looks mad, and his mom does too, because, she's just as entitled and arrogant as he is. And then they all dance, and then Prudence dances with Johnny, and they kiss, and it's just a nice ending, right? So definitely a different movie. Like, I liked this movie because it was a little different. And I love Andrew W. Walker. He's such a great actor. And I liked that he was a mechanic, and, they had to convince him to stay. And then the girl he falls in love with isn't like, the princess, or, you know, a lady, from another country, or, a duchess or something like that. He fell in love with, the assistant, or the advisor of the Duke, which I loved because her parents had passed and the Duke pretty much raised her and she didn't really have anybody. So I actually love this. So even though it's called The Reluctant Royal and it's about royalty, I thought it was a little bit of a different movie just because it had a different feel to it. You know what I mean? He was a mechanic from Philly and she didn't have any family, but she, grew up with the Duke and really was protective of him as, the chief advisor, getting all his affairs in order and making sure, he had his schedule and was on time. So it was almost like she was really just taking care of him. So it was nice, you know what I mean, that her and Johnny got together. So I liked that. It was a royal, but, it wasn't the typical girl, wants to be a princess and, she marries a prince. I just liked the way this was a little different. So I always do my Gen rating anytime I do a movie review. Basically, what did I love about it, what I didn't love, or what I disliked about it. Was it believable? The actors, the story, did I believe the characters? And then the overall feel of the movie. So that's kind of my Gen rating. So, I went over the things that I liked, that it was a little different. I loved the actor, Andrew Walker. I didn't dislike very much. I mean, I kind of liked how they piece it together. I like that in the beginning he made this juice and he was trying to get his friends to sell it at the pub, and then they came back and brought that back with the workers on the land and the farm and trying to make the juice and calling it common ground juice. So I love that. It was almost like it was going back down to his roots. I liked that they saw that softer side, even though he was known as the old crust and he's a real stiff person and personality. Like, he does have a good heart. So there's not that much that I disliked about it. I kind of liked that the love, connection was between them. And like I said, the cousin and his mom, was one of those love to hate characters. So they did great. The acting was great all the way around. I did believe it. Like, I really did feel like Andrew Walker was a mechanic. Like, I bought that. I thought he did really well around the cars. So I actually thought it was a good movie. The feels, like I say, overall feels, I thought it was a feel good movie. I like the different take on a royal movie. So for this particular movie, since like I say, I always do my Gen rating, for this movie, I would give it as a Gen rating, 4 gold crowns. So yes, I give it 4 gold crowns out of 5. I thought it was well done. If you have an opportunity to see the movie, like I say, if you're an Andrew Walker fan, you're gonna love it because he does so great in this movie. And there's other actors and actresses in it, but that's the main one that I really noticed. But yes, if you get an opportunity, you have time, you want to watch a movie that's a little different with the Royals, definitely check it out. But my Gen rating is definitely 4 gold crowns. So I hope you enjoyed my review. If you have any comments, leave them below, and I will see you next time. Bye.